everybody, my name is Beth Hoag. I'm a physiotherapist who works in cancer rehabilitation, lymphedema, and pelvic health. In this video, we're going to go over how to do self-manual lymphatic drainage for lymphedema of the left arm. So before we dive into the technique, I wanted to go over a few important points. First of all, it's important when you're doing this technique that you're doing it directly over the skin. In this video, I'm going to be demonstrating over clothing, but remember when you're doing it at home, directly on the skin. Second, it's also important to remember this technique is a very light technique. If you remember the lymphatics in the anatomy, we're aiming to stimulate the lymphatics that sit just below the surface of the skin. So we don't want to be going very deep with this technique. Just enough pressure that we're able to sweep across the skin or stretch the skin as we go along. Third, I'm going to ask you to do about 15 repetitions for each step. You can do more in areas that are more swollen, thick, and fibrotic. Finally, if you find that elevating your arm improves your swelling, which can happen in the earlier stages of lymphedema, then you certainly can elevate your arm as we're going through the techniques. The other thing that's really important to understand is why we do things in a certain order. I often describe lymphedema like a traffic jam on the highway. Most people want to go right to the area of swelling and start their lymph drainage there. But if we think about a traffic jam on the highway, it doesn't make sense to go to the last car in the line and start pushing that car trying to force it forward because there's all sorts of congestion in front of it. Instead, it makes more sense to go to the front of the line and work our way backwards, removing one car at a time until we get to that last car in the line. Think about your area of lymphedema like the last car in the line. So we're going to start by doing lymph drainage close to the body and then close to the center of the body, and then we're going to work our way down towards the arm. So let's get started. The first place we're going to go is up by the neck. If we draw an imaginary line between our collarbone, the meaty muscle at the back called your trapezius, and the side of your neck, there's a hollow. If I hike my shoulder just to show you a little bit more closely, we can sink our fingers into that space. We're going to use the pads of our two fingers and lightly place them on the surface of the skin. We want just enough pressure that we're able to stretch the skin in a circle formation without sliding the fingers or digging down into the muscle. So we're going to do 15 repetitions. It does not matter if you go counterclockwise or clockwise, whatever makes the most sense. After you've done 15 repetitions on one side, we're going to take the pads of the fingers from the other hand, reach across the body to that same area between the collarbone, the side of the neck, and the meaty muscle at the back, sink into that space, and stretch the skin in a circle formation. Again, it does not matter if you go clockwise or counterclockwise in this area. 15 repetitions. At this point, I want to point out that I've put an elastic around my left wrist to help us remember which side has lymphedema for the purpose of this video. After we've cleared the neck, our next point is to go down and clear some of the deep lymphatics in our trunk. We're going to do this through diaphragmatic breathing. If we visualize a circle around our lower ribs, that's where our diaphragm sits. So we're going to work on initiating deep breaths from those lower ribs as you breathe in, and that exhale will be relaxed. The belly will rise and fall, but I really want the focus to be on those lower ribs. We're going to do 15 deep breaths. Breathing in and feeling those arms expand as you breathe in, and as you exhale, feeling those hands come back in. You don't have to have your hands around the lower ribs, but I find for a lot of people it really helps to cue them where to breathe properly. After the deep breathing, we're now going to move on to opening the lymph nodes in the right armpit. Now, a lot of people get confused with this step. They say, well, Beth, my lymphedema is on my left side, so shouldn't I drain these left lymph nodes? And my answer is, if you're having lymphedema in the left arm or the left chest area, these lymphatics are already struggling. The purpose of lymph massage is to open up other healthy areas of lymph nodes to redirect fluid to another area of the body. So we're going to move on to those right arm lymph nodes. Typically, I suggest resting your arm on your head if you have the mobility through the shoulder, but it's absolutely okay to keep your arm down by your side as well. I'm going to put my arm up overhead for the video, and then what you're going to do is with the full palm of your left hand, you're going to place it in the armpit. Again, just enough pressure that you're going to stretch the skin, not so much that you're digging into the muscle and not so lightly that you're sweeping and sliding all over the place. So hand in that armpit with enough pressure to stretch the skin, and then we're going to do 15 circles, clockwise or counterclockwise, stretching the skin. Now, some people really push hard with the palm of their hands and their fingers stay rigid. Keep the palm relaxed, the fingers relaxed, and use your entire hand and fingers to do the work. Once you're done this step, then the next step is to stimulate the lymph vessels that drain across the anastomosis over towards the right armpit. Now, we have lymph vessels in the front that go from armpit to armpit and also in the back. Two ways you can do this. One is you can do a light petting motion with your hand across the front, always going towards the lymph nodes that you've just opened up, or some people like to think about it as away from the swollen side. You can either draw with the right hand, or you can lightly push with the left hand, whichever feels more comfortable for you. The second technique is actually stretching the skin a little bit. So with the palm directly on the skin, with enough pressure just to stretch the skin a little bit towards the right, and then release and do a few in that location, and then move on to another location, doing some stretches towards the right, and then moving on. You can always switch hands if it gets a little awkward, and working your way across 15 times. Now for the back, it's pretty impossible to reach behind from armpit to armpit. So we have a couple of choices here. One is if you're fortunate enough to have a partner or a roommate, you can ask them and teach them the technique to go across the back. The other option though, is to get a little creative. So what I've done is I've taken a poof. So those are those things you use in the shower and you use some liquid soap. And then I've got a long shoehorn. And all I've done is used an elastic to stick it on the shoehorn. So with our poof on a stick, we can reach behind on the left side and lightly sweep across to our right armpit. This makes it nice and easy, and you can do this on your own 15 times. The next step is to open up the lymph nodes in the groin or the inguinal lymph nodes on the same side as your lymphedema. So because we're working through left arm lymphedema, we're going to open the groin lymph nodes on the left side. The area of these lymph nodes is relatively easy to find. If you're in a sitting position, that crease of your hip, if we take the thumb and rest it in the crease of your hip and then relax the fingers down on an angle towards the inner thigh, that more or less covers the area of the inguinal lymph nodes, remembering that you're doing this directly on the skin. Just enough pressure once again that you're stretching the skin in a circle formation, not too deep that you're digging into the muscle and not too light that you're sliding around. Again, 15 repetitions clockwise or counterclockwise to stimulate those inguinal lymph nodes. The final step is to drain the lymphatics down the anastomosis between the left armpit and the left groin. Arm can be up overhead or by your side. We're going to start with our hand by the side of the chest or the side of the breast, and we're going to sweep down towards those inguinal lymph nodes that we just opened up. Again, you have a choice of technique. You can do the sweeping or that petting motion technique. If you prefer the skin stretch technique, you can take your hand starting at the side of the chest or the breast, doing 3 or 4 skin stretches down towards the inguinal lymph nodes, and then move to the next spot. Stretching the skin about 3 times, and then moving on to another spot until you reach those inguinal lymph nodes. Again, 15 of those. Now we're going to move on to doing lymphatic drainage through the affected arm, in this case, the left arm. It's easiest to think about dividing the arm into sections so you don't get too confused. we're going to talk about the upper arm, the forearm, and then the wrist and the hand. With the upper arm, if we think about it as the side of the arm, the front of the arm, and the back of the arm, that'll make it a little bit clearer. So we're going to start at the elbow and on the side of the arm, and we're going to sweep up towards the top of the shoulder. Throughout this demonstration, we're going to use the sweeping technique, but you certainly are welcome to use the stretching technique if you would prefer. After we've done 15 sweeps up the side of the arm to the top of the shoulder, then we're going to go to the back of the arm, thinking about reaching around to the inside of the arm and sweeping towards the outside, starting at the elbow, doing 3 or 4 in one spot, and then working our way up to the middle of the arm, or this muscle is called your tricep, so over that tricep, and then going up a little bit higher towards really the back of the armpit, working your way up the arm 15 times. Same thing using the front of the arm, we are going to sweep from inside to outside of the arm, 3 or 4 in one spot, moving up to the middle of the bicep. I'm going a little bit faster than you would be just for the sake of the video. And again, going up and down the arm 15 times. After you're done that, it's not a bad idea to follow up with a few more sweeps on the side of the upper arm. Moving on to the forearm, we're going to start in the elbow. We have some lymph nodes right at the crease of the elbow, so we're going to apply a skin stretch technique in this region to stimulate those lymph nodes. So again, if we use the palm of the hand, relaxed hand at the crease of the elbow, we're going to stretch the skin in a circular formation, just like we've done everywhere else we have lymph nodes. Not so much pressure that you slide and not so too much that you dig in. 15 repetitions clockwise or counterclockwise. Now, the elbow is a place where we can get a lot of fluid sitting in these little pockets. So we're going to do a little bit of work on the inside and outside of the pointy part of our elbow called the olecranon. What I tend to do is using the pads of my fingers, find the pointy part of the elbow and slide either to the right or the left of that, and then start doing some sweeps up the elbow, up along the sides in that crease. You can do 15, but if this is an area that has a lot of thickness or a lot of congestion, by all means spend more time in here. And then don't forget to go to the other side of that elbow, that bony part of the elbow, and sweep up on the other side. As you start to get comfortable doing this, you can do both sides at the same time by using your thumb and your index finger and sweeping up on the back part of the elbow. Again, if you need to spend more time here, you can spend up to 5, even 10 minutes if it really makes a difference for you. Moving on down into the forearm, this is an area where a lot of people find the tissue is thick or fibrotic. So we're going to think about the forearm in 2 parts, the back of the forearm and the front of the forearm. If we start at the front of the forearm, we're going to do a very simple sweep technique from the wrist up towards the elbow where we stimulated those lymph nodes 15 times. Again, if this is an area that's a bit fibrotic, you can go a little bit deeper, sinking your fingers in to that tissue. On the back of the forearm, same thing. We're going to sweep up the back of the forearm towards the elbow. If this is an area of fibrosis, by all means spend more time here, or you can even get your fingers in there and go deeper into that fibrosis, working to soften it. And as it starts to feel softer, you can then lighten up and go back to a lymphatic sweep. For the wrist and the hand, I've stood up to give you a close-up so you can really see what I'm going to be doing. Because there's a whole lot of little nooks and pockets around the hand and the knuckles, this is a really common area for fluid to sit, as well as fibrosis to develop, which is that thickening of the tissue. The wrist I really teach as an extension of the forearm. So as you're doing your sweeps in the forearm, you can extend that down to the wrist on the front and on the back. As we get into the hand itself, we have 2 options. We can again start with that sweeping technique on the back of the hand, or adding that skin stretch. The other thing I really like to do is go between the bones or the metacarpals in the back of the hand. So sinking in very lightly and doing some sweeps up between each knuckle up towards the wrist. Each one spending about 15 repetitions. When we go down into the hand, the lymphatic vessels go up along the sides of all the fingers except the thumb. So we then want to start doing some sweeping, taking your thumb and index finger and doing a light sweep or with a little bit more pressure so you're stretching the skin, about 15 repetitions in each finger. I'm going to speed up here and move along to the thumb. For the thumb, the lymphatic vessels sit on the front and the back. So we can hold the hand on the thumb with the fingers and slide up toward. Once you've completed the lymph massage down in the fingers and the hand, it's a good idea to work your way back up through the entire process, back up into the neck. So in other words, we're going to start at the wrist and do your forearm work, do your elbow work, do the upper arm work, reopen the lymph nodes in the right armpit and the left groin, re-stimulate those anastomoses front and back, and finally finish up by the neck in that terminus area, 15 repetitions. So this completes our video for self-manual lymphatic drainage for left arm lymphedema. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to head over to my website and reach out to me by email. Until next time, be well.